The transmission cut out with a crackle, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Captain Sarah Voss stared at the holodisplay, her fingers still resting on the controls. The message had been simple, blunt, and to the point: "We are the Zalrathi. You have 2 hours to surrender your planet, or face annihilation." Her pulse quickened. The Zalrathi, a race known for their vicious conquests across the galaxy, had never made such demands before. And never had they dared challenge humanity directly, until now. "Status report, Lieutenant?" Sarah's voice was steady, betraying none of the nervous tension building inside her. Lieutenant Kim Ellison, her right-hand officer and one of the few survivors from their last mission, was already at his console. "We're still receiving their message across multiple frequencies, Captain. No other communication from them. Just threats." "Keep the lines open," Sarah said, turning to the large screen displaying the looming threat: the Zalrathi warships, massive behemoths hanging in orbit just beyond Earth's atmosphere. "They've made a mistake." Kim glanced at her, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean, Captain?" "They've underestimated us." Sarah's voice was low, barely a whisper, but it carried with it the weight of a decision long made. "We don't surrender." The Zalrathi had been raiding systems for decades. Their cold-blooded approach to conquest made them feared across the galaxy. But humanity had always fought back. "We had no choice." Sarah thought of her family back home, of the civilians she'd sworn to protect, and of the decades of conflict humanity had endured and overcome. The Zalrathi were in for a rude awakening. But the question remained: how far would she go to stop them? "Ready all defense systems. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment," Sarah ordered. "We need to send a message." Kim nodded, fingers dancing across his console. "Aye, Captain. All systems are operational. And the rest of the fleet is responding as we speak." A soft beep interrupted their conversation, and Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The incoming transmission was from an unknown source. It was a silent plea, crackling with static but unmistakable. "Captain." Kim's voice was tentative, almost unsure. "It's from Earth. Someone's trying to warn us." "Patch it through," Sarah commanded. She felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise as the distorted voice crackled into the bridge. Don't engage them. You can't win. They'll destroy you all." The voice faltered and broke off. "Who was that?" Sarah demanded, her hand tightening around the armrest of her chair. She felt a chill creep down her spine. The warning wasn't just a plea, it was a cry for help. The message seemed familiar, but there was something about it she couldn't place. She glanced at Kim. "I don't know, Captain. It's not anyone we've identified from Earth's command. No trace on record." A dark thought crossed her mind. Had the Zalrathi infiltrated Earth's communications? Was someone already on the inside, sowing fear and division? Her grip on the chair tightened. "Prepare a response," Sarah ordered, her voice colder than before. "They're not going to break us. Not today." Kim hesitated for a moment before obeying, sending out a rallying message to all fleets and colonies. "The Zalrathi want war. Well, they'll have one. And we'll give them hell." A silence fell over the bridge, punctuated only by the low hum of the ship's engines. The crew was ready. Sarah could feel the anticipation building in the air. This wouldn't be just another skirmish. This would be the test. The ultimate test of humanity's resolve. But there was something more lurking beneath the surface, a gut feeling, an instinct telling her that the Zalrathi had something far worse in store. Something humanity hadn't faced before. "Captain, there's something else," Kim spoke again, drawing Sarah from her thoughts. He pointed at the sensors. "The Zalrathi warships, they're charging up." "Charging?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "For what?" A sudden flash lit up the darkened void of space. One of the Zalrathi ships, a massive dreadnought, released a burst of energy, a weapon unlike anything Earth had ever encountered. The ship shook violently, the lights flickering as alarms blared. The energy weapon hit Earth's atmosphere. But this time, it wasn't a blast. It was a pulse, a shockwave that rattled the foundations of every human settlement across the globe. "We've been hit!" Kim shouted, his hands scrambling across the control panel. Sarah's eyes widened. This wasn't just an attack. It was a declaration of war. A war that would test everything humanity had ever known about survival, strength, and resilience. She turned to face her crew, every one of them bracing for the coming storm. "Ready yourselves," she said, her voice steely and resolute. "We're going to show the Zalrathi what it truly means to provoke humanity." As the first rumblings of battle echoed through space, Captain Sarah Voss felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. For if humanity could stand against this, they could stand against anything. And the Zalrathi would soon learn the price of underestimating humanity. The ship shuddered violently as another shockwave from the Zalrathi weapon hit Earth's atmosphere, rattling every soul aboard the dreadnought. Captain Sarah Voss steadied herself, her hand gripping the console before her. Alarms blared throughout the bridge, but her focus was unwavering. Every instinct told her that this was no ordinary assault, the Zalrathi had something more sinister in mind. "Damage report, Lieutenant," Sarah barked, her eyes scanning the chaos unfolding on her ship's display. The crew was in motion, each member focused on their task, but even they could feel the weight of what was coming. Lieutenant Kim Ellison, his face pale but determined, quickly checked his readouts. "Minor hull damage, Captain. No breaches in the immediate areas, but that energy pulse, it's messing with our systems. We've lost communication with several colonies, and the Earth defense satellites are down." Sarah's stomach dropped. The satellites were the last line of defense, the backbone of Earth's security. Losing them meant humanity was exposed. "What about the fleet?" she asked, her voice sharp. The fleet's readiness was their only hope of countering the Zalrathi. "They're responding, Captain," Kim confirmed, but his voice wavered. "But I don't know how effective they'll be. If they hit our satellites this hard, Earth's entire defense grid might be compromised." Sarah exhaled slowly, her mind racing. She couldn't afford to let panic seep in, not now. Not when the stakes were this high. "Order the fleet to hold position. We need to regroup and reassess," she said, her tone resolute. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. We can't just wait for them to destroy everything we've worked for." Kim hesitated, then nodded. "Understood, Captain." As he relayed the orders, Sarah turned her gaze to the viewports, where the Zalrathi warships loomed like dark behemoths against the stars. The sheer size and power of their fleet were enough to make any seasoned captain hesitate. But not Sarah. Humanity had always faced impossible odds, and always found a way to survive. She wouldn't let that change now. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission," Kim said, his voice tight. "It's from Earth." "It's different this time." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Patch it through." The distorted voice crackled across the comm system, sharp and panicked. "Captain Voss, you need to listen. They have more than just their warships. They've unleashed something we didn't even know existed. You're all in danger." The voice cut out abruptly, leaving only static in its wake. A chill ran down Sarah's spine. The fear in that transmission was palpable, and it unsettled her more than she cared to admit. Could it be another Zalrathi trick? Kim asked, his brow furrowing. They've been known to use psychological warfare. What if it's a diversion? Sarah shook her head, already dismissing the idea. No. That wasn't a trick. Whoever that was, they're genuinely scared. She paused, glancing at the rest of the crew, who were focused on their stations. There's something else happening here. Something we don't understand. Should we inform the fleet, Captain? Kim asked, his tone wary. No, Sarah said, her voice firm. We don't have all the pieces yet. We move forward with what we know. We hold our ground, wait for the next move. Suddenly, the ship's systems flared to life with a loud, persistent alarm. The shields flickered, showing signs of strain. Sarah's eyes widened as she turned to the sensor display. A fresh wave of Zalrathi ships was entering Earth's orbit. "All hands, brace for impact," Sarah shouted. The ship rocked again, more violently this time. The lights dimmed, and the hum of the engine stuttered. The sound of metal groaning under pressure echoed through the hallways. Sarah's grip tightened on the console, her knuckles white as she fought to maintain control of the situation. "Shields are down to 30%, Kim reported, his voice urgent. "We're taking hits from every direction, Captain." Sarah's mind raced, calculating the best course of action. The Zalrathi hadn't just attacked, they were trying to break Earth's defenses, piece by piece. And their weapons were more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. For the first time, Sarah felt the weight of the overwhelming odds pressing in on her. "We need to evacuate the civilians in the surrounding areas," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Get the shuttle bays ready. The fleet may not be able to protect Earth indefinitely, but we can save as many as we can." Kim nodded sharply, already relaying the orders. "Aye, Captain." As the ship lurched once more, Sarah's eyes never left the viewport. The Zalrathi ships had surrounded Earth, their dark silhouettes forming a ring of death around the planet. But Sarah wasn't ready to give in, not yet. Not when humanity still had its will to fight. "Captain," Kim said, his voice strained. "They've launched something. It's coming for Earth." A strange object, unlike anything Sarah had seen before, broke from the largest of the Zalrathi ships. It sped toward Earth, its trajectory unmistakable. A weapon. And it was heading straight for them. Sarah's jaw tightened. The storm was only just beginning. "All hands, prepare for impact. We fight back, or we die trying." The sky above Earth was no longer the peaceful blue it once was. It had transformed into a canvas of chaos, swarming Zalrathi warships, a tangled web of destruction, and the ever-present hum of imminent doom. The dreadnought rocked once more as the weapon launched from the Zalrathi flagship descended toward Earth. Captain Sarah Voss clenched her jaw, her fingers curling into fists as she stared at the dark mass hurtling toward them. It was big, too big for any conventional defense. The only thing they could rely on now was the human spirit. "Incoming!" Lieutenant Kim Ellison shouted over the chaos, his voice barely audible above the cacophony of alarms. "Brace for impact," Sarah commanded, her voice steady despite the terror in her gut. The world seemed to slow as the massive projectile grew larger on the view screen, its trajectory unwavering. The dreadnought groaned under the strain of another blast. Sparks flew from the control panels, and the air became thick with the scent of ozone. Sarah's eyes narrowed. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement. The Zalrathi were showing Earth just how powerless they believed humanity to be. "Captain." Kim's voice was sharp with urgency. "We need to divert power to shields, now." "Do it," Sarah snapped. The energy reserves were running low, but they couldn't afford to be stingy now. The Earth's survival depended on this moment. Kim's fingers flew over the console, rerouting energy from the lower decks. The ship shuddered as the shields flared back to life, but Sarah could tell it was a temporary fix. The damage was too extensive. With a sharp lurch, the ship jolted as the weapon collided with Earth's atmosphere. For a split second, everything was drowned out by the deafening roar that filled the bridge. A violent shockwave ripped through space, sending the dreadnought reeling. Sarah was thrown against the console, the world spinning as she struggled to stay conscious. Her head throbbed, and her breath came in ragged gasps. Despite the dizzying chaos, she managed to push herself to her feet, her hands shaking but determined. "Report," she shouted, her voice cutting through the fog of her disorientation. Kim's face was pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. "The weapon, it's landed. Ground forces are already reporting seismic tremors across several continents. Earth's defenses are," he choked on the words. "We're beyond the point of no return." Sarah's stomach sank. Earth was on the brink of collapse, and there was nothing left to hold it together. She turned her gaze to the viewport once more, her eyes tracing the chaotic dance of Zalrathi ships. It was impossible to see through the haze of warships and debris that cluttered the skies, but Sarah could feel the weight of their presence bearing down on them. "We need to rally the fleet," she said, her voice fierce. "Get us a comm line to the others. Now." Kim nodded, quickly working his terminal. His fingers hovered over the screen, the tension in the air palpable. "Sir, there's something off. The Zalrathi are pulling back. They're not engaging directly anymore." "Pulling back?" Sarah's brow furrowed. "Why?" Before Kim could respond, a new transmission broke through the static, cutting across the comm system with eerie clarity. It was not the usual distorted voice of the Zalrathi but a familiar voice, a voice that sent a jolt through Sarah's chest. "Captain Voss." The voice was calm, yet filled with a sense of urgency. It was General Tobias Clark, a senior officer from Earth Command. "I've got eyes on the situation. This isn't just a war anymore. It's a race against time. The Zalrathi weapon is a precursor to something far worse." Sarah's grip tightened on the console. "What are you saying, General?" Clark's voice hardened. "It's not just an attack. It's a signal. The Zalrathi have been prepping for something larger. Something that Earth cannot survive." Sarah's breath hitched, and for the briefest moment, fear gripped her heart. "How much time do we have?" "I don't know, but I need you to do something for me, Captain." Clark's voice was strained, almost pleading. "You have the Dreadnought, the best ship we've got. If anyone can stop this, it's you. I need you to get to the Zalrathi mothership. We've got intel that suggests it's a command center. If you can disable it, the rest of their fleet will crumble." Sarah's mind raced. A direct assault on a mothership? That was suicide. They barely had the firepower to hold off the current wave, let alone take on the heart of the Zalrathi invasion. "You're asking for a miracle, General," Sarah said, the weight of his request sinking in. "I can't promise anything. We're barely holding on here." "I know," Clark replied. "But if you don't try, Earth won't stand a chance." Sarah's eyes darted across the bridge, her crew ready but weary, each person aware of the looming impossible odds. She could see it in their faces, they were all prepared to follow her into the jaws of destruction. And for the first time, Sarah realized just how much humanity depended on this ragtag crew, this last hope for survival. Her voice was steady, despite the cold wave of fear washing over her. "All right. Get ready. We're going in." As the dreadnought surged forward, the stars outside no longer seemed like distant beacons of hope. They felt like the eye of a storm, and humanity was about to be swallowed whole. The dreadnought shuddered as it pierced the depths of the Zalrathi fleet, the once grand armada now a looming jungle of warships ready to obliterate anything in their path. The command center loomed ahead, a massive fortress in space, the heart of their invasion. Captain Sarah Voss stood at the helm, her fingers gripping the console with a mix of determination and desperation. The crew was silent, each person immersed in their duties, their eyes on the screens or their weapons, knowing they were charging straight into the jaws of death. "Steady, everyone," Sarah called out, her voice steady, though the pounding of her heart threatened to drown her words. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future." Lieutenant Kim Ellison, standing by her side, turned toward her. His face was pale, his eyes dark with fatigue, but there was a spark in them, a fire that wouldn't die. "Ready to fire when you are, Captain." Sarah nodded, though she wasn't entirely sure the dreadnought was ready for what lay ahead. They'd survived thus far through sheer willpower and determination, but no amount of human ingenuity could hide the truth. They were outclassed. The Zalrathi had weapons far beyond their reach. Yet, something in Sarah told her they couldn't just throw in the towel. Not now. Approaching the mothership, Kim called out. The massive warship dominated the view on the main screen, its jagged silhouette more like a beast than a ship. Its hull was a dark, obsidian black, lined with pulsating red lights that seemed to throb like a heartbeat. The Zalrathi flagship, command center of their operations. The ship's weapons powered up with a low, ominous hum, and before Sarah could even think to order evasive maneuvers, a surge of energy shot out from the mothership. It was like the sun flaring up in the sky, blinding in its intensity. "Brace!" Sarah shouted as she slammed herself into the pilot's seat. The dreadnought rocked violently, its shields absorbing most of the blast, but the shockwaves still sent them spiraling out of control. The hull groaned, and alarms screamed throughout the ship. "We're losing power." Kim's voice was urgent. "The engines are failing, Captain." Sarah's stomach dropped as the ship's forward momentum faltered. They were drifting in space, vulnerable. She could almost feel the weight of the entire Earth's survival on her shoulders. "Get us back online, now," she commanded, her voice sharp. "If we don't move soon, they'll pick us off like sitting ducks." Kim's fingers flew over the console, sweat dripping down his face. His efforts were swift but frantic as the systems began to hum again. Slowly, the dreadnought regained its course. "We're good to go," Kim said, breathless but determined. Sarah gave him a curt nod, her mind already racing. The Zalrathi were closing in, and time was running out. They had only one shot at this. "Helm, full speed ahead." "Prepare for a direct assault," she barked. Her heart pounded, but her resolve never wavered. As the dreadnought surged forward, Sarah's thoughts flashed to the crew members below deck, those who had put everything on the line. They weren't just fighting an alien force, they were fighting for their home, their families, their future. She couldn't let them down. The closer they got to the mothership, the heavier the air felt. The silence between the crew members was deafening. They all knew the gravity of the mission. No one spoke, because nothing needed to be said. They were in this together. And that unity, that belief in each other, was the strongest weapon they had. The enemy warships loomed in their path, and Sarah steeled herself. The dreadnought couldn't fight them all, but if they could take out the mothership, the rest of the fleet would fall. It was humanity's one and only shot. "Captain, we're within range," Kim called out, his fingers poised above the firing controls. Sarah felt her pulse spike as the tension reached a breaking point. "Take the shot." Kim pressed the button. A volley of energy pulses shot from the dreadnought's forward cannons, cutting through space with terrifying speed. The first hit the mothership's shields and sparked a violent explosion, but it held. The second strike shattered a large section of its outer hull, sending debris scattering into space. But the mothership didn't waver. In fact, it fired back with a vengeance. A blast of energy slammed into the dreadnought, sending it into a wild spin. Sparks flew from the console, and Sarah could hear her own breath hitch in her throat. "Critical damage!" Kim yelled. "We've lost auxiliary power. Shields are down to 10%. Sarah's mind raced. They had one last chance. She wasn't about to give up now. "Give me everything you've got," she barked, her voice rising over the chaos. "We're not stopping until that mothership is down." Kim nodded grimly. He rerouted all available power, pumping it into the weapons systems. The dreadnought shuddered violently as the final barrage of energy streaked through space, tearing through the damaged hull of the mothership. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, with an earth-shaking rumble, the mothership's core exploded, sending shockwaves that rocked the dreadnought to its core. Sarah held on as the ship reeled, her hands white-knuckled on the control panel. She could hardly breathe. Then, finally, the stars beyond the viewport came into focus again. The mothership was gone. A heavy silence fell over the crew as the truth sank in. "We did it," Kim whispered, almost unbelieving. Sarah's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding in her chest. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had struck a blow. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. The war wasn't over. It was just starting.